Welcome to the Libido Lounge, where we focus on all things love, lust, and libido. We believe that fabulous sex is important to health as exercise and good food. Hey, Dr. Diane Mueller, your libido doc here. In this episode, we're going to be talking about sensual communication and how to communicate in the bedroom and outside of the bedroom for your ultimate connection and intimacy goals. Sensual communication is such a fun topic because it's really teaching us how to get more pleasure, how to give more pleasure, and how to communicate in a way that's going to bring you and your partner closer together. I often find that it's very tricky in the beginning to learn how to communicate about sex and about intimacy because most of us as humans have this great desire to provide for our partner. And when we are talking about these types of things about sex, we're essentially in some ways we're saying, hey, this certain area can be improved. And if it's not done well, a partner can take this and they can extrapolate meanings such as they're a bad lover and they're not providing something. And this can feel really bad. So it's an important topic and it's a really good practice to communicate well in the bedroom and intimately because it's really a practice for all of life as well with your partner. So how to communicate. We're going to talk about where, we're going to talk about what, we're going to talk about when, we're going to talk about how. So, when and where. So, one of the things I want to make you very aware of is you want to be very careful about keeping the bedroom, if that's the main place that you have sex, you want to keep the bedroom almost sacred and intimate and where it's just, you're going to go in there and you're going to remember these good feelings. If you have, like one of the things I want to help you avoid, if you have a conversation and say it doesn't go super well around intimacy and making requests, and hopefully you'll avoid it not going well by listening to this. But if it doesn't go well, one of the things you don't want to have happen is for them to remember the intense conversation that you had when you were laying in bed together. And now, next time you have sex, all of a sudden there's a flashback of that exact memory. And then there can be performance anxiety and all of those things. So, as far as like the when and the where, it really is going to depend upon where you're at in your relationship and your love life and your communication. So, for example, if you just finished this amazing intimacy session, right? And you're both feeling just so connected and filled up and you're like, really just wanting to make a couple requests and ask some questions and tweak a couple things, the bedroom could be a beautiful place to have that conversation. But if you just got done with a session, with a lovemaking session or an intimacy session that, say, didn't feel as connected and as good, and maybe one person did not have as good of a time, perhaps they didn't reach orgasm, and another person's feeling bad about that, or they're both, these things that are just like maybe awkward and they don't go very well in the bedroom, right? So if you have a moment like that, or let's say there's like performance anxiety and woman's not performing or man's not performing, any of that kind of stuff. So if anything like that going on, the bedroom in that moment, not the place to talk about it. So in that scenario, we would say when and where. We would say you want to do it out of the bedroom and you don't want to do it right away, right? If the intimacy moment was incredible and you have time, then the bedroom could be a very, appropriate place. And right after intimacy could be a very appropriate time when you're feeling all those love juices, but the how is still very, very, very important. And sometimes it's good to practice how and the delivery outside of the bedroom again. So if it doesn't go well, you're not having those associations of the sacred sex area as being like a trigger, right, in future sexual experiences. So, how? The biggest thing is remembering that usually in most relationships that are, generally healthy, there's a desire for both partners to want to please and show up and give and receive, but also give and know that they're a good lover, right? In a sexual, relationship, like most people want to feel like they're good lovers. And so we don't want to hurt somebody's ego in this process. It does us zero good. So it's usually helpful to start by asking questions. Questions are a great way to start. And how you can ask questions in the beginning is saying like, hey, I've been noticing that there are certain things that I really love about our intimacy experience. And I want to tell you about these because I'm just loving these so much and I want to talk about it and I want to have an open conversation. Can we do that sometime? And ask if now is a good time, right? So that's like from a how perspective. Now, if you've just got done with an amazing love making session, right? Or an amazing intimacy session, doesn't always have to be sex, then you can even like shorten that and say like, hey, that was incredible. Do you have time for me to tell you like all the things I love? Or, oftentimes you can just go straight into that. You don't even have to ask in that scenario. But when there's like potential tension, anything like that, usually asking if this is a good time can really help set the stage. And that like gives somebody kind of the warning around like, oh, we're going to talk about sex now. And it lets them know, like, is this a good time? Are they going to put energy into this? Are they going to be able to be present? Are they thinking about work or kids or anything else that's going on in their mind, right? So we want to make sure to be, really, really good about uh, working with our partner in their tendencies and those sorts of things. So that's one. And then once you've asked that question, then of course it's like, well, what do you do next? How do you really go deeper into getting more information at that point, right? So what you do next is this. You start by really focusing on the things you love, right? On the things you want more of, which means that the more detail you can have on the things that you love, the better. If you just say, like, oh, yeah, I love when you bite me, right? We'll just throw that out. I love when you bite me. All right. Can you see the difference between that and I love when you bite my neck, and especially when you go down the left side towards my shoulder and use a little tongue with your bites. And I like the soft bites. I like a little bit more than the hard bites, right? The more information you can give a partner about what you really like, the more you're going to get that exact thing. The more specific you are, the more they're going to be able to provide that for you, which, guess what that means? You need to be tuned in more to what you like. And if you're, in the moment of a sexual experience, make sure you're paying attention to like, whoa, that feels so good. What is this person doing? Right. And the same thing applies for what you don't like. So after you go through all of these things, I encourage you to not say like, and now I want to tell you about all the things I hate, right? That's probably not going to go well. But it's usually a safe thing to say something like, I also notice there's other things that, sometimes we're doing and they just don't have the same level of impact on me. Can I share some of those things too? So first we're talking about all the things we like and all the things that are just making sex so wonderful, right? So we're really coming at with first like, hey, building it up. These are the things. And the next thing is like, now how are the things that we can do to make it even better, right? And so notice the other thing I did linguistically is said, and I noticed some things that we do, not that you do, right? We say we do. There's an element of, even if there's somebody else that's like doing more of, say, whatever it is, maybe you hate neck biting, and maybe this, your lover is neck biting you. When you say we, it creates like, hey, we are choosing to do this. Even if the person is a giver and receiver, it's still an act of we. And that takes a level of like personalization where somebody is like doing something wrong. It helps the ego to hear this as like, oh, this is a we thing. There's some things that we do that aren't actually turning me on a ton. And again, asking permission. Can we talk about those things? And so you really want to be, focused on like not a lot of blame and just, kind of naming the thing without, personalizing it so much can really help the partner hear you. So it could be like, yeah, I'm just noticing that neck biting is like, it's just not doing much for me. Like, I want to like it, or, that's true for you. Of course, don't say that if that's not true for you. But, the idea is like the specific things like neck biting, not doing it for me. But notice before you do this, if there's other biting in this example, we're using biting across the board in examples today. Notice if there's other biting, like maybe your inner thigh. Like, do you like being bitten there, right? Is there like soft little love bites that you love or hard love bites, you know? So you want to be very specific. And that helps too. It's like, okay, well, like if you're saying, hey, this isn't really doing it for me, like, is this something that like is turning you on? Like, how does it feel when you do that for me? Right. So there's like these questions. So it's like, it's not just like this is off the table, but you're also trying to learn, like, oh, wow. Like, well, biting actually, if your partner, if you don't like it, but your partner is like, yeah, biting is like really turning me on, then maybe there's an exploration around like, well, okay, what happens if we bite in this way or bite in that way, or you bite my thigh instead of my neck? So the idea is really setting the stage of, yeah, this isn't turning me on, but I want to know about it for you. Like, does it turn you on? And so then it becomes this almost co-creative process where it's like, if you learn that, okay, in this example, like biting's not very important to either party, ditch the biting. But if biting turns out to be important for one party and not the other, this is where the yes, no, maybe sometimes conversation comes in. And I talk about this in some of my other episodes, is figuring out like, is it a complete turn off for you? Is it something that, okay, is like a maybe, maybes I put as like, I'm not huge about it, but here and there, maybes and sometimes can oftentimes go together. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's not a huge turn on for you, but now it turns your partner on so much. So now this is something that you can provide for them, right? And we know these things about each other too. The other thing it helps is when you're in that moment and say that you're not into biting and your partner is, once you've had these conversations, in that moment, it's a lot easier to sink into, okay, well, maybe this isn't doing anything for you, but wow, then it's like tuning into how much this is turning your partner on and what you're providing for them. And it becomes in that moment about like, this is an offering. Of course, always, 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 always stay within what feels authentic and true and safe for your own sexuality, right? That's very, very important, I feel. And so that's why, the sometimes and maybes are there, because they're not the hard no. They're things that like are like maybe not the turn ons, but they're things that like, okay, I can do this sometimes and feel good and feel an integrity to provide this for my partner, but it just may not be the thing that is going to get you off, right? So the biggest thing to understand with all of this is we want to help our partners feel safe. We want to help our partners feel like they are not doing anything wrong. And we want to make sure that the way we're always framing things is really with like the we and the orientation to, I love intimacy. I love sex. I love our connection. I want it to go deeper and to be better. I want to have even more pleasure with you. I want to have even more connection with you. So I want to have these conversations and to really both of us, feel like we're being heard. And the way to do that is to continue to bring things back to like the we space. Like, I feel like in partnership, there's actually, three relationships in many ways. There's a relationship that each person has with themselves, right? There's a relationship we have with each other, right? But there's also this almost like this we space. And we're really focused on this kind of we space around what is creating between the two individuals when you guys come together. And that's where focusing on what your own likes are, what the other person's own likes are, what your nevers are, what your maybe sometimes are. And that can really help to have these conversations. Remember, try to make sure, no matter how excited you are to have these conversations, to respect your partner. If they're like, now is not a good time, if you're sensing that work was stressful, any of these things, you want these conversations to go well. So it's important to do these at the right time. And always remember to also focus a lot on what is going really well and what you want more of. You do want to bring those things in that you want to change, right? That's important for growth. That's important for improvement. But you want to also focus on the good, because the more a lover feels like they are a good lover, the more they're going to still be passionate to show up and confident to show up, in their lovemaking skills and the lovemaking sessions, right? So we want other people to feel passionate. We want them to feel confident. We want to make sure we're building and edifying our partners. And We want to talk in a way that's helping the sexuality and the sex life continue to grow and to evolve and to get deeper. And one of the things that I think is really important is that there's so many things in life that we practice. Most things in life, you practice, what happens? You get better at it, right? So sex is very interesting how oftentimes people in long-term relationships will say like the sex gets worse. It's very interesting where just about everything else in life we practice, we get better at. So this is why, though, this is why sometimes, I mean, there's other reasons, but one of the reasons that we see that there can be this boringness that happens in long-term relationships. There is a change in that like familiarity. We talked about that in an earlier episode. So there is certainly change in that desire that happens in long-term. But another thing that happens is people don't communicate about this. So we have years of doing things with another person that maybe are not turning them on. And we practice those over and over and over. So what do we practice? We practice doing the things that aren't actually working. So the only way out of this is to communicate and instead practice doing the things that are. I will see you guys on another episode. Go out and practice this. I hope you will share this episode with your friends. Please do rate and leave me a review as well. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening to the Libido Lounge. Please don't keep me a secret. Please share this with your friends. You can find me on YouTube, on Instagram, as well as how to work with me at mylibidodoc.com.